Okay, so let's get started with this main body of the vehicle. For this part I will do an overview of the layers that I've created. And first thing you might notice is that I don't have textures, materials for the inside elements like my seat, steering wheel or desk. And that's because I wanted to save some memory for this project. And of course I will do the textures for these elements, but I will just duplicate my scene. In this case it's this one, main X. I will duplicate my scene, my project, and I will open it, delete some unnecessary layers, and then I will just texture my inside elements. And this is because I have only 16 gigabytes of memory in my computer, and you can see having so many layers with this resolution, it's 4K resolution, it's pretty expensive if it's about memory. So I didn't want to texture my inside elements here in this scene because it was just too heavy, and after a while it's a little bit laggy and slow. So to be able to work faster and more smooth, I will just texture these elements in a new scene, and of course after everything is done I will export this one, and of course the second one for the inside elements, and I will manually combine these two textures in Photoshop. So I hope this is clear. So let's right now talk a little bit about these layers that we've got in this scene. Of course I was working with the Unreal Engine 4 post-process that is a little bit modified by me. Of course I turned off all these ambient occlusion and shadow effects because for me it works better. So let's get started with this first group, which is responsible for this black material. Of course you can see we've got plenty other groups and materials, but let's get started with this one. This is paint that I've created. I've started with this paint thick machine material. Of course I turned off completely a normal map for this one because I want this material to be smooth without any bumps, because this is just a base for the start. So the second material is just a clean layer, and this layer is responsible for these white stripes. Of course I've used a Dynamask editor, and I've painted some scratches to remove a little bit of this white paint to look it more destroyed and scratched. So this layer has no roughness value, opacity is set to 0 as you can see, same for the normal map, metalness and bump, it's only with an albedo and opacity set to 50. Next layer is a rust. It's a standard rust material. Of course I have Dynamask, and I've spent a huge amount of time putting this rust manually in places where I want. So I didn't really use any Dynamask presets, I just put this rust manually. So let's see what we've got next. Next is Dirty Steel, just for small scratches like here. Not sure if you are able to see this. these are very small scratches. I have few of them. Maybe I will add some more later. So this is the dirty steel material. Let's skip this one and let's go to the sand materials. Our body of the vehicle is pretty dirty and I've got few sand effects on it. Pressing 1 we can switch to the albedo and we can better see all the sand without any reflections. So here let's maybe turn off some of these. This one is for the bottom and I was using gradient there to just make this kind of dirty effect from the ground. This one is for the top. I was using top fumes or something like this. It's a preset in Dynamask editor to just get a lot of dirt on the top of the vehicle, and then I was using different brushes to remove unwanted sand and get a look that I really want. This one is just a backup for this layer because sometimes it's still a little bit unstable and you can lose your mask, so I just create a copy. This one of course is for some little sound effects like here and here, so it's just an additional sand. Let's turn it off. So this first one is just to get a little bit of variation on the surface of the paint. You can see it more clearly in the roughness layer. If I will turn this sand off, you can see it's very clean right now. So let's turn them on. This one is, you can see a bottom dirt, and this top sand effect. Additional dirt, and that's it. Here I've got some oil spills on the back. Pretty cool effect. Some shiny oil. Yeah, now you can see it better now. Okay, so the last layer here is a rust bump. I've just created a clean layer. It has no albedo, metalness, normal or roughness. You can see everything is set with opacity to 0. And of course I've duplicated a mask from this rust by just copy mask and paste mask, and I've just modified the bump value here, and this way I am able to achieve a bump on the edges of the rust. This rust fine has no bump, it has only its own normal map value. Okay, so let's check another layer. This one is for these pipes, and of course it's a simple steel with a little bit of color variation. On the top of this we've got some rust, of course. This is just a basic rust material. And on the top of this we've got two clean layers that I've added to just make a little bit of change to the ends of these pipes. So the first one is to make the end a little bit darker, and the second one is a lot darker because it's the inside of the pipe. So if I turn this off, you can see the result. Yeah. So I will turn them on. So the next layer is for these frames around the windows. So it's basically pretty same stuff. Steel base, another steel just to get some color variation and roughness variation to the metal, rust and sand. Most of the sand and rust was manually added to the texture. Okay, here we have a rust material for this inside part. Here we've got layer called air front, and it's for this grid, front grid, and it's of course almost the same stuff, steel base, steel variation, rust and sand. So nothing special. Bumpers are also very similar. You can see and also most of this was done by the hand. Let's go further, and here are some more interesting layers. Let's go with these stripes. Stripes are here on the front and on the back around these pipes. So it's nothing very advanced. Let's go inside. You can see at the bottom we've got just basic leather smooth material. We've got some edge wear to make these edges a little bit more visible, a little bit more brighter. And then at the top of this I have actually it's a rust material with a Dynamask to get a little bit of color variation to this leather. And that's it. Let's see what we've got here. Bottom part, and here we've got two layers inside. One is for the wheel support, and this is this element without the compression, and this element. So let's maybe do a compression overview because it's simpler, I think. At the bottom, of course, we've got some brushed steel. We've got oil material for this leaking dark stuff. Of course, we've got red steel material for the compression, and of course we've got above a little bit of sand. So let's explore this one. Okay, so at the bottom I have a rusty material. The next layer is the same rusty material, but it's a little bit it's a different color, it's gray, and the next is even darker, just to get, of course, some color variation. You can see it pretty clearly here. And of course this one is having also a little bit of bump, just to break a little bit the surface. So you can see this one is default and this one have a little bit of bump. And of course on the top of this we've got sand and oil as usual. Oil is of course in places like here, for example. So it's a little bit shiny. Okay, let's move forward. Bottom material, and this is just the bottom material. It's just a basic rust. You can see it's called cast iron because I've added this material at the beginning, but I was experimenting, just clicking here and changing material, so sometimes if you pick different material the name is not updating. So this one is just, you can see it's actually an asphalt material here, and here we've got rust. And with the asphalt material I was doing the same trick as with the tire. I've just added asphalt material because I wanted a normal map only from this material. So you can see metalness, for example, it's set opacity to 0, bump 2, roughness 2, and albedo of course 2. So this one asphalt material is only for the bump, I mean only for the normal map. And then of course rust and sand, and that's it. So I think all these layers are pretty simple. Here the last one is this front bumper. Let's go with these rusty pipes. Of course at the bottom we've got default rust. Above we've got the same layer but with the darker color and a Dynamask. And of course it has different normal parameters. You can see this upper rust layer has no texture intensity in your normal map, and you can clearly see this with the shaded view. And it has also a different roughness value, so this one is 71 and this one is 88. Okay, and above these rust layers I've got of course a sand, but before sand we've got just a normal clean layer with an alpha and this yellow color because I wanted to just create a sun bleach effect on the top of these pipes. So let's see the next one. It's for these metal constructions. The bottom part is, the bottom layer is rust. Above, with this gray material, it's galvanized steel, and of course sand on the top of everything. Okay, so here we have our lights, our headlights and our backlights. Of course we have a separate texture for our lights, and we will create a separate materials. So one thing I would like to show you is that I've created the inside parts of the lights. So here you can see this is the glass, front glass, and this is the inside element, and the same with the backlight. These inside elements will have no textures, they will have only a simple material in Unreal Engine, and that's it, no normal maps or stuff like this. So in Dido right now we will create materials only for these outside elements, and these outside elements will be half transparent or something like this. So let's switch into Photoshop, and here you can see we've got our headlights. Let's explore a little bit how our headlights material looks. Well, of course I've started by creating a base, and for the base I've used just steel scratched with a very dark roughness color. So right now it looks like almost like a mirror. Next I've just wanted to kill a little bit reflections on the edges of this light, so I've created simple layer with a mask, and of course I've adjusted the roughness of this. Next one is just some shadows. If we will switch to albedo layer and we will turn this off, you can see we are turning off some shadows that was created by this layer. And of course I've got plenty of sand. So this is the front element. You can see that we don't have transparency here, and that's correct. I want it this way because opacity mask or transparency I will just create in Unreal Engine. Okay, so here we have our backlights. They are pretty similar to the front lights. At the bottom we've got a standard steel scratched material with a red reflectance color and the dark reflectance color for the roughness. On the top of everything, of course, I've got few layers of the sand, and I have this one layer. These are some edges that are barely visible because of the sand layers, so this one is not very important. But here I have another layer which makes everything a little bit brighter. And of course it's adjusting the roughness a little bit too. Of course I have few Photoshop layers because I have created all these small cubes manually in Photoshop. Okay, so right now I will export everything, and in next video we will switch to Unreal Engine 4 and we will put everything together. So see you in next part.